The archive room exists in a kind of suspended silence, a silence that feels almost alive if you sit with it long enough. It's late now, very late, and the building has emptied of its daytime noise, leaving only the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the whisper of air through old ventilation shafts. I've been a detective for more years than I care to count, and tonight, like so many nights before, I find myself drawn back to this place. To these shelves that stretch upward into shadow, lined with files that no one has touched in decades. Each box, each folder holds a story that time has nearly forgotten. Stories of people who vanished into the night, of questions that were asked but never answered, of clues that led to dead ends and silence. I pull the first file from its resting place, and dust rises in a gentle cloud, catching the dim light like tiny stars suspended in the air. The cardboard is soft with age, the label faded to a whisper of ink. Inside there are photographs, black and white, their edges curled with time, and pages of typed reports, the letters slightly uneven from an old typewriter's keys. This is the Whitmore case from 1967. A cold winter evening when Margaret Whitmore left her apartment to walk 3 blocks to the corner store and simply never arrived. Her daughter reported her missing the next morning. I run my fingers across the photograph of Margaret, a woman in her early 50s, smiling softly at the camera, her eyes holding a kindness that even the grainy image cannot diminish. The initial investigation was thorough, or as thorough as investigations were in those days. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocked on every door along that 3-block route, asked if anyone had seen anything unusual. A few witnesses came forward. Mrs. Chen from the laundromat remembered seeing a woman matching Margaret's description walking past her window around 7:30. The testimony was uncertain, filtered through steamed glass and the distraction of folding clothes. Another witness, a young man named Thomas Reed, thought he might have seen someone, could have been Margaret, could have been anyone, standing beneath a street lamp near the intersection of Maple and 4th. But the light was broken that night, he said, and the shadows made everything unclear. The leads were pursued with dedication, officers following each thread as far as it would go, but one by one, those threads simply dissolved. Margaret's coat was never found, her purse never turned up. There were no signs of struggle, no witnesses to any confrontation, no ransom notes or mysterious phone calls. She had simply stepped out into a winter evening and become part of the darkness. And now, all these years later, her file rests here in my hands, still waiting, still whispering its questions into the quiet of this archive room. I close the folder gently, respectfully, and set it aside. There are so many more to examine tonight, so many stories that have lingered in this liminal space between knowing and not knowing, between memory and forgetting. The second file I draw from the shelf is thicker, heavier, the weight of accumulated questions, I suppose. The label reads Patterson, 1973, in that same faded typewriter script. David Patterson was 17 when he disappeared on the night of his high school graduation. His parents last saw him leaving the ceremony, diploma in hand, telling them he was going to a party at a friend's house and would be home by midnight. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., dawn, and David never returned. The investigating officers, I knew some of them, worked alongside them in later years. They did everything by the book. They interviewed his classmates, his teachers, his girlfriend Emily Morris, who had been at the party. Emily told them that David had seemed happy that night, excited about the future, talking about his plans to study engineering at the State University in the fall. He'd left the party around 11:15, she said. He'd given her a kiss, told her he'd call her the next day. Several other students confirmed this timeline. David had walked out the front door, keys jingling in his hand, and that was the last anyone remembered seeing him. His car, a blue 1969 Chevrolet that he'd bought himself with money from his summer job, was found 3 days later in a parking lot near the river, about 7 miles from the party. The doors were unlocked. The keys were in the ignition. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, nothing disturbed. Just an empty car sitting in an empty lot, as if David had simply stepped out for a moment and forgotten to return. The case file is filled with witness statements, each one carefully typed and signed. I read through them slowly, letting the words wash over me like a gentle tide. His friend Marcus said David had been in good spirits. His English teacher said he'd shown no signs of distress. His parents, their statements are the hardest to read even now, described a young man who was responsible, thoughtful, who had never given them cause to worry. The investigation stretched on for months. Officers searched the riverbanks, dragged sections of the water, checked bus stations and train terminals across 3 states. David's photograph was circulated, appeared in newspapers, was posted in shop windows and on telephone poles. Tips came in, dozens of them, each one pursued with methodical determination. Someone thought they'd seen David hitchhiking on Route 9. Someone else was certain they'd spotted him working at a gas station 2 counties over. But each lead, when followed, revealed itself to be a case of mistaken identity, a trick of light and hope and human pattern seeking. And gradually, slowly, the investigation grew quieter. The phone calls became less frequent. The searches were called off. The file was eventually closed, not solved, just closed, and placed here on these shelves where the dust settled upon it like snow, year after year after year. I turned the pages carefully, mindful of their fragility, reading the detective's notes from those final months. The frustration is palpable even through the professional language, the sense of having done everything possible and still coming up empty. David Patterson walked into the night of his graduation and never walked back out, and the only answer the darkness has offered is silence. I reach for another file and then another, pulling them from the shelves in a slow, meditative rhythm. Each one feels like a small act of remembrance, a way of saying, you are not forgotten, your story still matters, even here in the quiet and the dark. The Jensen case from 1981, the Morales case from 1969, the Kowalski sisters, 1975. Each file opens to reveal the same pattern: careful investigation, dedicated officers, witnesses who came forward with fragments of information, and then the gradual cooling, the trail going cold like embers fading in the night. In the Jensen case, a man named Robert Jensen left his office downtown one Friday evening in November, telling his secretary he was headed home for the weekend. He never arrived. His wife called the police on Sunday morning, worried and confused. Robert's car was found in his assigned parking space at the office building. His briefcase was still in the trunk. His coat, it had been cold that November, was draped over his desk chair. Everything suggested he had intended to leave, to make that journey home, but somehow, he hadn't. The investigation turned up small mysteries within the larger mystery. Robert had withdrawn a substantial amount of cash from his bank account the day before his disappearance, $5,000, which was a considerable sum in 1981. But there was no indication of financial trouble, no debts that anyone knew of, no obvious reason for the withdrawal. His marriage was stable, his colleagues described him as reliable and content, his health was good. Detectives interviewed his family, his friends, his business associates. They looked into his background, searching for anything that might explain his vanishing. A few witnesses reported seeing a man matching Robert's description at various locations around the city that weekend. At a diner on the north side, at a bus station, walking along the waterfront. But none of these sightings could be confirmed, and they contradicted each other in their timelines and details. As the weeks passed, the leads dried up like water in sand, and the case slowly receded from active investigation into this archive, into this quietness. The Morales case tells a similar story in different words. Sofia Morales, a nurse at the county hospital, finished her shift at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday in March. She waved goodbye to her colleagues, walked out to the employee parking lot, and was never seen again. Her car remained in its parking space. Her purse was found in the car, wallet and keys inside. Witnesses, there were several, had seen her in the hospital corridors during her shift, professional and calm as always, showing no signs of distress. But after she walked out those doors, it was as if she'd stepped through an invisible threshold into some other realm. The investigating officers worked the case hard. They interviewed patients she'd cared for, staff members, visitors to the hospital. They checked her apartment, spoke with her neighbors, traced her movements in the days leading up to her disappearance. There were no threatening phone calls, no stalkers, no signs of danger. Sophia had simply vanished. And the case file here, with its careful reports and faded photographs, offers no resolution, only documentation of the mystery itself. I sit back in my chair for a moment, letting my eyes rest, feeling the weight of all these stories accumulated in this room. The fluorescent lights hum their steady note. The building settles around me with small creaks and sighs. Outside the high windows, the night is deep and complete. The Kowalski sisters. Their file is one I've returned to many times over the years, drawn by the particular strangeness of their case, the way it seems to defy easy explanation. Anna and Helena Kowalski, aged 14 and 16, disappeared on a Saturday afternoon in June of 1975. They had asked their mother if they could ride their bicycles to the park, a trip they'd made countless times before, just a mile from their house through familiar neighborhood streets. Their mother said yes, reminded them to be home by dinner, and watched them pedal away down the tree-lined street, their laughter trailing behind them. Dinner time came. The girls did not. Their mother waited, growing increasingly anxious, and finally called the police at 8 p.m. Officers responded quickly, began searching the park and the surrounding area. They found the girls' bicycles locked to a rack near the park's main entrance. Nothing appeared disturbed or stolen. The bikes were simply there, waiting, as if Anna and Helena had planned to return to them. But the girls themselves were gone. The investigation that followed was extensive. The park was searched thoroughly, every path and wooded area, every picnic shelter and restroom. Police interviewed dozens of witnesses who had been at the park that afternoon. Families, joggers, other teenagers. Several people remembered seeing two girls matching Anna and Helena's description. One woman recalled them buying ice cream from a vendor near the playground around 2 p.m. A man remembered seeing them sitting on the swings, talking and laughing. But after approximately 3 o'clock, the sightings ceased. No one remembered seeing them leave the park. No one saw them with anyone suspicious. They simply weren't there anymore. The case generated significant attention. Search parties combed through nearby woods and fields. The local news ran stories, showed the girls' photographs, Anna with her dark braids, Helena with her bright smile. Tips poured in from across the region. Someone claimed to have seen the girls getting into a car near the park. Someone else was certain they'd spotted them at a rest stop on the interstate. Each tip was investigated. Each one led nowhere. The detective in charge of the case, his notes are here, written in careful longhand, documented his growing frustration and sadness. He interviewed the girls' family repeatedly, searching for any detail that might crack the case open. He reviewed their school records, spoke with their friends, their teachers. Both girls were well-adjusted, happy, looking forward to summer vacation. There were no family problems, no reasons to run away, no enemies or threats. The investigation continued for years, really. New detectives were assigned as the original ones retired. New theories were proposed and tested, but the core mystery remained untouched. How do two girls vanish from a busy public park in broad daylight without anyone seeing them leave? I closed the Kowalski file slowly, my fingers lingering on the photograph of the two sisters, their arms around each other, smiling at whoever held the camera. The archive room seems especially quiet now, as if the building itself is listening, holding space for these unsolved stories. I can hear my own breathing, steady and slow, and the distant sound of traffic passing on the street far below. These cases, they share a quality, a particular texture. They are mysteries not of violence or obvious tragedy, but of absence. People who were present and then were not. Individuals who stepped from the known world into what? The questions hang in the air like dust motes in lamplight, visible but untouchable. As the night deepens around me, I continue pulling files, reading through the careful documentation of investigations that slowly went cold. The Brennan case, 1978. Thomas Brennan, a retired postal worker, vanished while taking his evening walk, a routine he'd maintained for 15 years. His wife noticed he hadn't returned by dark, called the police, and the familiar pattern began. Searches, interviews, leads that seemed promising but dissolved upon examination. The Chen case, 1982. Jennifer Chen, a college student, disappeared between her dorm room and the library, a distance of perhaps 200 yards across a well-lit campus. Her books were later found on a bench along the path, neatly stacked, as if she'd set them down for just a moment. The Novak case, 1970. Elderly Walter Novak walked out of his retirement home to sit in the garden, a daily habit, and was never seen again. The garden had a single entrance, monitored by staff. No one saw him leave. Each case has its own particular details, its own collection of witness statements and investigative reports, its own small pile of evidence that refuses to coalesce into answers. I read through them in the lamplight, my voice barely audible even to myself as I murmur through the details, letting the stories wash over me. There's something almost meditative about this process. The repetition of it, the way each case echoes the others while maintaining its own unique character. An investigation begins with urgency, with hope that this time the answers will come quickly. Officers canvass and interview, evidence is collected and analyzed, and then, gradually, the momentum slows. Days become weeks, become months. The trail grows fainter. The witnesses' memories blur. The physical evidence yields no breakthrough, and eventually, reluctantly, the case is marked as cold, filed away, left to rest in archives like this one. But the stories don't truly rest. Not really. They linger here, patient and persistent, waiting in the darkness. Each file I open releases a whisper of the past, the scent of old paper, the sight of faded ink, the weight of unanswered questions. These people mattered. Their disappearances left holes in the fabric of other lives. Families who waited and wondered, friends who could never quite move forward, detectives like myself who couldn't let go of the sense that somewhere, somehow, there must be an answer. I stacked the files carefully, creating a small monument of unsolved mysteries on the desk before me. The Whitmore case, the Patterson case, the Jensen and Morales files, the Kowalski sisters, and all the others. Each one a story interrupted, a narrative without an ending. Outside, the city sleeps. Inside this archive room, I am a witness to these lingering questions, a keeper of these cold cases. My role is not to solve them. Some mysteries, I've learned, resist solution no matter how much dedication we bring to them, but to remember them, to ensure that these people who vanished are not forgotten, that their stories continue to be told, even if only in whispers in the deep hours of the night. I lean back in my chair, letting my eyes close for a moment, feeling the profound quiet of this place settle around me. Tomorrow, or perhaps the next night, I will return to these files. I will read through them again, searching for some detail I might have missed, some connection I failed to make. But for now, in this moment, I simply sit with them, with all these stories of disappearance and mystery, letting them exist in the silence, honored and remembered. The archive breathes around me. The files rest on the desk, and the night continues its slow, patient passage toward dawn. I rise from the desk now, leaving those files behind for a moment, and make my way toward the back of the archive, toward a door I've opened countless times before. The evidence room, a place where objects wait in their own kind of silence, preserved and protected, each one a fragment of a story that was never finished. The door opens with a soft creak, and cool air greets me, air that hasn't been disturbed in hours, perhaps days. I step inside, and the motion sensor light flickers on gently, revealing row after row of metal shelving, each shelf bearing boxes and bags, labeled and dated, organized with careful precision. This is where the tangible pieces rest, the things that were touched, worn, written upon, the things that were left behind. I move slowly down the first aisle, my footsteps quiet against the concrete floor. The shelves stretch upward into shadow, and each box contains something that once mattered desperately to someone. Something that investigators cataloged and photographed and analyzed, hoping it would reveal its secrets. But secrets, I've learned, are not always eager to be told. Some prefer to remain mysteries, wrapped in their evidence bags, sleeping peacefully in climate-controlled darkness. I reach for a box on the middle shelf, dated 1982, labeled in faded marker, and I carry it to the examination table in the center of the room. The overhead light hums softly, a gentle companion in this quiet space. Inside the box, there are several sealed bags, and I lift the first one carefully, turning it in the light. A letter. Yellowed paper, folded and refolded many times, the creases now fragile with age. Through the clear plastic, I can see handwriting, blue ink, slightly smudged, the loops and curves of someone's careful penmanship. This letter was found in a coat pocket, discovered weeks after the person who wore that coat had vanished. It was never sent, never received by its intended recipient, just words preserved in transit, suspended between intention and delivery. I don't need to open the bag to know what it says. I've read the transcription many times. Words of love, or perhaps goodbye. Words that mean everything and nothing now, depending on how you hold them in your mind. I set the letter down gently and reach for another bag. This one contains fabric, a torn piece of cloth, edges frayed, the color once perhaps red but now faded to a rust-tinged rose. It was found caught on a fence post, miles from anywhere, on a road that leads through dense forest. Whose clothing did it come from? The missing person? Someone else entirely? Tests were run, fibers analyzed, but the results were inconclusive. As so many results are, the fabric tells me nothing definitive, and yet it speaks volumes in its silence. It was there. It existed in a moment of violence or flight or simple carelessness. It bore witness to something, even if we'll never know what. I place it beside the letter, and now there are two objects on the table, two pieces of different puzzles, resting side by side in the gentle light. I breathe slowly, feeling the quietness of this room settle over me like a blanket. There's something soothing about being here, among these remnants. They've given up their urgency long ago. They no longer demand answers with any force. They simply exist, patient and still, waiting for whatever comes next, or waiting for nothing at all. And in that waiting, there's a strange kind of peace. I continue my examination, reaching for a smaller box on the table beside me. This one is older, the cardboard softened at the corners from years of careful handling. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that crinkles softly, I find a watch. A man's wristwatch, the leather band cracked and stiff, the crystal face scratched but intact. The hand stopped at 3:47. Morning or afternoon, no one could ever determine. It was found near the shore of a lake, half buried in wet sand, discovered by someone walking their dog on an overcast morning in March. The investigation tried to trace it, to match it to the missing person it presumably belonged to. But watches like this were common then, manufactured by the thousands, sold in department stores across the country. It could have belonged to anyone, really, but it was found there in that specific place, its hands frozen at that specific time. And so it became evidence. It became part of the story. I turned the watch over in my gloved hands, feeling the weight of it, examining the scratches on the back where an inscription might have been but isn't. Just smooth, worn metal, polished by time and touch. I imagine someone checking this watch habitually, glancing down at their wrist to see if they were late, if they had time, if the moment had arrived. And then, at 3:47, the watch stopped. The mechanism failed, or water got inside, or the impact of whatever happened was enough to freeze those delicate gears forever. I set it down carefully, and it rests there on the table, still stopped, still silent, keeping time with nothing. The next item I examine is a photograph. Not a case file photograph, but an actual photograph that was found, that is itself the evidence. It's in a protective sleeve, the colors faded to soft pastels. It shows a group of people at what appears to be a picnic or outdoor gathering. Trees in the background, dappled sunlight, people smiling at the camera. Their clothing suggests the late 70s, maybe early 80s. Bell-bottom jeans, wide collars, sunglasses with large frames. But I don't know who they are. This photograph was found in an abandoned car, tucked into the sun visor, and despite every effort to identify the people in it, no one ever came forward to claim it. No one recognized the faces. It remains a mystery within a mystery, a piece of evidence from a case where even the evidence itself has no clear identity. I study their faces, these strangers frozen in a moment of apparent happiness. They're laughing, some of them. One person is mid-gesture, hands raised in emphasis of some forgotten story. Another is looking away from the camera, towards something outside the frame. They had lives, these people. They had that day, that gathering, that moment when someone said to look at the camera and smile. And then this photograph was taken, developed, printed, and somehow ended up in a stranger's car, which was then abandoned on a rural road, which then became part of an investigation that never resolved. The layers of mystery stack upon each other, each one soft and hazy, like looking through fog. I place the photograph on the table with the other items, the letter, the fabric, the watch, and I step back slightly, looking at them all together. 4 objects, 4 fragments of 4 different stories, or perhaps of the same story told 4 different ways. They don't connect to each other, not in any official sense. They come from different cases, different years, different circumstances. But here, in this moment on this table, they form a kind of constellation, a pattern that means nothing and everything. Evidence of absence, evidence of presence, evidence of moments that passed and left only these small, quiet traces behind. I return the items to their respective boxes with care, making sure each one is properly sealed, properly labeled, properly returned to its place in the careful order of this room. And then I move deeper into the evidence room, toward the shelves at the back where older cases reside. Cases from the 60s and 70s, cases from a time when the world moved at a different pace, when evidence was collected with different tools, different methods. I run my fingers along the edges of the boxes, reading dates and case numbers in the dim light, feeling the texture of old cardboard and older dust. Everything here is preserved, but preservation doesn't mean unchanging. Things age even in protection. They settle into themselves, becoming softer, quieter, more resigned to their eternal waiting. I select a box almost at random, though nothing is truly random here, I suppose. Every choice is guided by some unconscious pull, some quiet instinct that draws me to one story over another. This box is from 1971. I bring it to the table, and when I open it, I find a collection of small objects, each in its own bag. A key on a simple ring, a handful of coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, dated from the late 60s and early 70s. A matchbook from a restaurant that no longer exists, the name barely legible now. A small notebook, spiral-bound, with water damage blooming across its cardboard cover. These were the contents of someone's pockets, collected and cataloged when that person became part of a case, part of an investigation, part of an unsolved mystery. The key is ordinary, just a house key, brass-colored with no distinguishing marks. It was never matched to any door that investigators could find. They tried it in the locks of the missing person's home, the homes of friends and family, any location that seemed relevant. But it fit nowhere, opened nothing. Perhaps it was a key to a place long since demolished, a lock long since changed. Perhaps it was carried out of habit, even though it no longer served any purpose. We all carry such things, don't we? Objects that once had meaning, but now persist only as weight in our pockets, as familiar shapes we've grown accustomed to touching. The coins are just coins, legal tender from another era. They could have bought a newspaper, a cup of coffee, made a phone call from a payphone. Now they're just metal, just artifacts, their purchasing power obsolete, but their existence preserved. I let them rest in their bag, hearing the soft clink as they settle against each other. The matchbook is more interesting, advertising for a place called the Silver Moon Diner, with an address in a town 2 counties over. Investigators went there, of course, showed photographs, asked questions. The owner remembered nothing specific. It was a diner. Thousands of people passed through. The matchbook remained a clue that led nowhere, a suggestion of a place visited, a meal eaten, a moment passed that left no other trace. And then there's the notebook. I open the evidence bag carefully and use a gloved finger to gently turn the cover. The pages inside are warped from water, the ink bled and smeared, rendering most of it illegible. But here and there, words emerge from the blur. Fragments. Tuesday. Call about. Remember to. Just the ordinary notes of an ordinary life. Shopping lists, maybe. Reminders. Appointments half recorded and then abandoned when something more pressing arose. The handwriting is looped and hurried, written by someone who was thinking faster than their pen could move. And now those thoughts are frozen here, partially destroyed, partially preserved, telling us almost nothing except that someone once tried to remember, tried to organize their days, tried to keep track of all the small things that make up a life. I close the notebook gently, seal it back in its bag, and sit with these objects for a long moment. The key that opens nothing, the coins that buy nothing, the matchbook from a place that no longer exists, the notebook full of reminders that will never be fulfilled. Together, they form a portrait of absence, of a life interrupted mid-thought, mid-day, mid-everything. And they rest here, year after year, in this temperature-controlled room, preserved but purposeless, evidence that no longer actively seeks to prove anything but simply exists in quiet testimony to the fact that someone was here once. Someone held these things. Someone's fingers touched them, pockets carried them, intentions surrounded them. And then everything stopped, and only these objects continued on. As I continue through the evidence room, moving slowly from shelf to shelf, I notice how patterns begin to emerge and then dissolve, like shapes appearing in clouds. So many cases contain letters, unopened mail, unfinished drafts, notes left on kitchen tables, each one frozen in the act of communication, words trapped mid-journey between writer and reader. So many cases contain keys that lead nowhere, coins that will never be spent, watches that have stopped their measuring of time. The objects repeat, case after case, variations on the same themes, and in this repetition, there's something almost rhythmic, something that lulls the mind into a state of quiet acceptance. Mystery upon mystery, but each one settling into a soft, familiar pattern. I find myself drawn to a case from 1985, and I open the box to find clothing, a jacket neatly folded in a clear preservation bag. It's a denim jacket, faded blue, with patches sewn onto it. Band names mostly. Some I recognize, some I don't. The stitching is careful, done by hand, each patch attached with small, precise stitches that show someone took their time, took care, wanted these patches to last. This jacket was found on the bank of a river, caught in the roots of a tree, discovered by fishermen 6 weeks after the person who owned it had disappeared. It had been in the water, but not for long. It had dried in the sun, stiffened, faded further. But it survived, more or less intact, and became evidence. I look at the patches, reading the names, imagining someone choosing each one, deciding where it should go on the jacket, threading the needle and working slowly in good light, maybe listening to the very music that the patches represent. Creating something personal, something that announced identity and taste and belonging. This jacket was armor and advertisement, comfort and statement. And then it was found empty, abandoned or lost or deliberately left, and now it rests here in this bag, in this box, in this room, speaking of someone who loved music, who cared about how they presented themselves to the world, who took the time to make something ordinary into something unique. I fold the jacket back carefully, seal it away, and reach for another box. This one contains jewelry, a single earring, gold-toned in the shape of a small leaf. Only one earring, the other never found. It was discovered in a parking lot, lying near a storm drain, glinting in the sunlight. No way to know if it was related to the case or just a coincidence. Just another piece of lost jewelry in a world full of things that slip from ears and fingers and necks. But it was close enough to where a car had been parked, close enough to the timeline, and so it was collected, labeled, saved, just in case it mattered. The earring is delicate, pretty in an understated way. I imagine someone choosing it from a display, trying it on, liking the way it caught the light, the way the leaf shape suggested nature, suggested growth, suggested something organic and alive. And now it's here, separated from its pair, incomplete. So much of evidence is like this. Incomplete, fragmentary, suggesting wholeness but never achieving it. We gather pieces and try to assemble them into understanding, but the full picture remains elusive, remains just out of reach, shimmering at the edges of comprehension. I place the earring back in its small envelope, back in its box, and I lean against the examination table, feeling the coolness of the metal through my shirt. The evidence room is so quiet. The hum of the light fixture is the only sound, a constant, gentle presence. Outside this room, the archive continues its own silence. Beyond that, the city sleeps or doesn't sleep, carries on its life without knowing or caring about this room, these objects, these stories. And that's as it should be. Not everything needs to be known. Not everything needs to be solved. Some things can simply rest here, preserved and protected, honored by the careful attention of their preservation, even if they never yield their secrets. The evidence speaks in whispers, and sometimes the whisper is enough. Sometimes the whisper is all there is, and all there needs to be. I spend more time here among the evidence, letting the minutes drift past uncounted. Box after box, item after item, each one a small story, each story part of a larger mystery that may never resolve. And as I examine them, I feel my breathing slow, my thoughts soften at the edges, becoming less like active investigation and more like meditation. This is the heart of the work, really. Not the solving, but the witnessing. Being present with these objects, these remnants, these quiet testaments to interrupted lives and unanswered questions. Giving them my attention, my respect, my acknowledgement that they matter even in their incompleteness. There's a box containing shoes, a pair of worn sneakers, the laces still tied, the soles packed with dried mud that investigators carefully preserved because it might contain clues about where these shoes had walked. The mud was analyzed, of course, its composition studied, compared to soil samples from various locations, and it told a partial story, mineral content suggesting a particular type of terrain, plant matter indicating certain vegetation. But the terrain was common across several counties, the vegetation even more widespread. The shoes and their mud became just another piece that suggested much, but confirmed little. I look at them now, and I see someone's daily footwear, broken in and comfortable, carried them through ordinary days, and then through something extraordinary enough to make them evidence. There's a box containing glasses, eyeglasses, with thick frames and strong prescription lenses. They were found folded neatly on a car dashboard, as if placed there intentionally, as if someone had taken them off to rest their eyes or clean the lenses and simply never put them back on. But without glasses, the person who needed them would have been nearly blind, navigating the world in a blur. Why leave them behind? The question was asked 1,000 times, examined from every angle. Perhaps a spare pair existed somewhere. Perhaps desperation made clear vision seem unimportant. Perhaps something else entirely, something no one thought to consider. The glasses rest in their bag, frames slightly bent, lenses smudged with old fingerprints that were photographed and analyzed decades ago. And there's a box containing a map, a road map from the early 90s, the kind that used to be folded in glove compartments before GPS made them obsolete. This one has been unfolded and refolded many times, the creases worn soft, some sections nearly separated. And on the map, in pencil, someone has marked a route, a line traced from one town to another, with circles around certain locations. Investigators tried to understand the significance of these marks, drove the routes, visited the circled locations, but no pattern emerged that made sense in the context of the case. Maybe it was an old route from an old trip unrelated to the disappearance. Maybe it was the key to everything. No way to know now. No way to ask the person who drew those careful pencil lines what they meant, where they were going, what they hoped to find. I fold the map gently, return it to its box, and I feel the weight of all these objects, all these fragments, settling around me like snow. Each one is unique, and yet they all share this essential quality. They are all things left behind, things that continued existing after the people connected to them vanished into mystery. And in their persistence, they become almost sacred. Relics of the unsolved, artifacts of absence, physical proof that someone was here, lived here, moved through the world, touching and being touched by ordinary objects that would become, through circumstance, extraordinary. The evidence room is so peaceful now, in this late hour, in this quiet space between night and approaching dawn. I've been here for, I'm not sure how long. Time moves differently in this room, among these timeless objects. But I can feel that it's time to step away, to close these boxes, to return them to their shelves where they'll wait patiently for the next time someone needs to look, to wonder, to witness. I do this slowly, methodically, making sure everything is properly sealed and stored. And as I work, I feel a sense of rightness, of proper order. These objects are safe here. Their stories are preserved. And whether they ever reveal their full truths or not, they exist in the record, honored and remembered, whispering their fragments of mystery into the patient, listening dark. I set down the magnifying glass and let my fingers rest on the cool surface of the evidence box. The objects have told me what they can in their fragmented way. But objects, I've learned, are only part of the story. The real echoes come from voices, from the words people spoke in moments of fear, of grief, of carefully constructed deception. I lean back in my chair and close my eyes, and the archive room seems to expand around me, growing larger and quieter until I can hear them again. The interviews, the conversations that took place in living rooms and police stations, in diners and on front porches, under flickering fluorescent lights and the soft glow of table lamps. These voices have stayed with me longer than any photograph, any piece of evidence. They return to me now in gentle waves, overlapping and circling, asking and answering, in patterns that blur together like fog rolling across still water. I remember a woman in a floral dress sitting with her hands folded in her lap. She spoke so softly I had to lean forward to hear her. "He left on a Tuesday," she said. Or was it Thursday? The days blend together now, but her voice remains clear, that particular tremor when she spoke about the morning. "It was early," she told me. "The sun hadn't come up yet, or maybe it had just started to. There was that blue light, you know, that early morning blue." I asked her what he was wearing and she paused, her fingers tightening slightly. "A gray jacket," she said. Or maybe it was brown. It was old, I remember that, worn at the elbows. Her eyes were distant, looking at something I couldn't see, something that existed only in her memory, growing hazier with each passing year. Then there was the man at the diner, his coffee growing cold as we talked. He kept turning the cup in slow circles on the scarred formica table. I saw someone, that night, or maybe it was the night before, near the old warehouse on Maple Street. Or was it Elm? They're so close together, those streets, and it was dark. I asked him to describe what he saw, and he frowned, concentrating. "A figure," he said slowly. "Just standing there, tall, I think, or maybe average height. The streetlight was out, you see, so it was hard to tell. They wore something dark, a coat maybe, or just dark clothing." His voice had a rhythm to it, a repetitive quality, as if he'd told this story many times, to himself and others, wearing the details smooth like river stones. The voices layer over each other in my memory now. A teenager who heard something, a neighbor who noticed a car, an old woman who remembered a stranger asking for directions. "It was a Tuesday," she said, "but hadn't someone else said Tuesday as well? Or was that Thursday?" The days of the week become interchangeable in these recollections, markers that lose their meaning, while the feelings remain sharp. Fear, uncertainty, the desire to help mixed with the nagging doubt that memory itself might be unreliable. I returned to these conversations in my mind, turning them over like the man turned his coffee cup, examining them from different angles. Each time I remember them, they shift slightly, details emerging or receding, voices growing softer or more insistent. This is the nature of testimony, I've learned. It changes even as it stays the same, a living thing that breathes and transforms in the darkness of recollection. And so I let the voices wash over me, gentle and repetitive, asking my questions again and again, hearing the same answers that never quite answer. The words circling back on themselves in soothing, hypnotic patterns that blur into the quiet of the archive room. There's a particular quality to the voice of someone who's hiding something. Not always obvious, not the trembling or the averted eyes that people expect. Sometimes it's in the smoothness, the way the words come too easily, too practiced. I remember sitting across from a man in a small interrogation room, the walls painted a pale institutional green that seemed to absorb sound. He sat perfectly still, his hands resting on the metal table, and he answered every question with calm precision. "I was home that evening," he said, "watching television. A game show, I think. Or maybe it was the news. I often watch the news." His voice had a measured quality, each word carefully placed, and yet there was something underneath, something that rippled beneath the surface like movement under ice. "What time did you go to bed?" I asked, and he didn't hesitate. "Around 10, he said. "Maybe 10:30. I'm usually in bed by 10:30. But later, when I asked again, approaching it from a different angle, he said 11. Or was it 10? The time shifted just slightly, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. And I was always paying attention, though now, in memory, the exact times don't matter as much as the feeling they created. That sense of something not quite fitting, like a door that doesn't quite close, leaving the smallest gap for doubt to slip through. The families had a different sound to their voices. Heavy with grief, yes, but also with a desperate need to be heard, to make their loved one real to me, to keep them alive in words if nowhere else. A mother showed me photographs, her fingers trembling slightly as she pointed to each one. This was at his birthday, she said, his 8th birthday, or maybe 9th. He loved chocolate cake, always chocolate. She moved to the next photo. And this was at the beach, or maybe it was a lake. We went every summer. He loved the water. Her voice took on a rhythmic quality, moving from photo to photo, telling me the same details with slight variations, as if by repeating them she could keep them solid, keep them from fading into the mist of time. He called every Sunday, she said, like clockwork. Every Sunday at 3 o'clock. Or sometimes it was Saturday, but it was always the same time, you see. He was good about that. I nodded, writing notes that I would later read and reread, trying to find patterns, trying to find the truth hidden in these repetitions and contradictions. But the truth I was beginning to understand was less important than the act of telling, the need to speak these details aloud, to have someone listen with patience and care. I think of another interview, this one conducted on a front porch as the sun set, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. An elderly man rocked slowly in a wooden chair, the rhythmic creak providing a soundtrack to his words. I heard something that night, he said, a sound like a door closing, or maybe it was a car door. It was around midnight, or 1 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, you see. I often can't sleep. He rocked and talked, and his words had the quality of the chair's creaking, repetitive and soothing, describing sounds in the night that might have been anything or nothing, events that might have been connected or entirely random, details that circled around an absence at their center. These voices return to me now, and I let them. I don't try to organize them or make them cohere into a single narrative. Instead, I allow them to overlap and echo, questions and answers forming patterns that are pleasing in their repetition, even when they lead nowhere. The words become a kind of music, rising and falling, the same phrases returning like a refrain. It was Tuesday or Thursday, around 10, or maybe later. I saw someone, or I thought I did. I remember. I think I remember. And in the archive room, in the deep quiet of this night, these voices are a comfort, familiar and soft, whispering their uncertain certainties into the listening dark. Sometimes the most revealing interviews are the ones that seem to say nothing at all. I remember a woman who came to the station of her own accord, saying she had information about a case that was already 3 years cold. She sat down across from me and folded her hands, and then she talked for nearly an hour without saying anything concrete at all. I had a feeling, she told me, just a feeling that something wasn't right. It was the way the light fell that afternoon, or maybe it was morning. There was something about the shadows. I asked her what she'd seen, and she shook her head slowly. Not seen exactly, more sensed. You know how sometimes you just know something? That feeling in your stomach, like something's wrong, even when everything looks normal? I nodded and let her talk, because sometimes that's what people need. Not to be questioned, but to be heard. She spoke about atmospheres and intuitions, about dreams she'd had that might have been memories, about a man she'd seen who might have been someone important or might have been nobody at all. He had a distinctive walk, she said, or maybe it was his posture, something about the way he carried himself. I noticed it because, well, I'm not sure why I noticed it, but I did. Her words circled and circled, never quite landing on anything solid, and yet there was something soothing in their vagueness, in the way they evoked a mood rather than a fact. Then there were the suspects who said nothing at all, who sat in silence while I asked my questions, their faces carefully blank. The silence itself became a kind of communication, heavy and present in the room. I would ask, "Where were you on the night of the 15th?" And the silence would stretch out, filling the space between us like water filling a vessel. Sometimes they would eventually answer, their words clipped and minimal. Home. Alone. Don't remember. Each word a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples that faded quickly back to nothing. One man sat for 20 minutes without speaking at all, just looking at his hands, which were rough and weathered, the hands of someone who worked outdoors. Finally, he said, "I don't know what you want me to tell you." And that was all. I tried different approaches, different questions, but each one met the same wall of quiet resistance. Eventually, I stopped asking and just sat with him in the silence. And in that silence, I learned something too, though I couldn't have said exactly what. The shape of his reticence, perhaps. The weight of whatever he was carrying. I think now of all the waiting rooms and living rooms where I've conducted these conversations, each one with its own particular atmosphere. The room with the ticking clock that marked time in steady, hypnotic beats. The room with the aquarium, where fish drifted past in endless, soothing circles. The room where traffic sounds filtered through closed windows, a distant white noise that made voices seem intimate and small. In each of these spaces, I asked my questions and listened to the answers, and the answers were always the same and always different. Names changed, places changed, but the pattern remained constant. The uncertainty, the desire to help, the fog of time that made everything simultaneously clear and opaque. I think it was raining that day, someone tells me, their voice soft with concentration. Or maybe the streets were just wet from earlier rain. Everything had that smell, that rain smell. Or maybe it was fall, and that was leaves I was smelling. Memory is strange that way, isn't it? The way smells and sounds get all mixed up together. And I agree. Writing down these details that may be details, or maybe simply the mind's attempt to fill in blanks that can never truly be filled. The words flow over me like water, and I let them, no longer trying to catch every drop, but simply feeling their movement, their rhythm, the way they ebb and flow in patterns that are becoming familiar, comforting even, in their endless, gentle repetition. The voices are growing quieter now in my recollection, softer and more distant, like conversations overheard from another room. I remember asking a young woman about the last time she saw her sister. Her voice was barely above a whisper. It was morning, she said, early morning. The kind of morning where everything is still and quiet, where the world hasn't woken up yet. Or maybe it was evening. Sometimes I get them confused now. But there was that particular quality of light, that in-between light. She paused, her eyes focused on something far away. We talked about ordinary things, what she was making for dinner, or maybe it was what she'd had for lunch. Small things, the kind of things you don't remember because you think you'll have 1,000 more conversations just like it. I've heard this same regret in so many voices over the years. The wish to have paid more attention, to have known that this conversation, this moment, would be the last one, would be the one they'd need to remember forever. If I'd known, they say, each one of them, if I'd only known, I would have listened more carefully, I would have noticed more, I would have asked different questions. But of course they couldn't have known. None of us can. We move through our ordinary moments thinking they're ordinary, not realizing that some of them will become fixed points in memory, examined and re-examined forever. There was a father who described his son's habits with meticulous care, as if by cataloging every detail he could somehow bring him back. He always had coffee in the morning, the father said. 2 sugars, or was it 3? I should know that. A father should know that. He read the paper, the sports section first, then the front page. Or sometimes he skipped the news entirely and went straight to the comics. His voice had a rhythmic quality, listing these details like a litany, a prayer made of small domestic facts. He wore a blue shirt on Mondays, or maybe that was Wednesdays. He liked blue, or green. He looked good in blue. I didn't interrupt these recitations even when they contradicted themselves, even when the details shifted and changed, because I understood that accuracy wasn't the point. The point was the act of remembering, the insistence that these details mattered, that they added up to a person who was real and loved and missed. The point was to hold on to something in the face of absence, even if that something was as insubstantial as the memory of a coffee order or a preferred shirt color. Another interview comes back to me now, this one conducted in a hospital waiting room, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant and bad coffee. A nurse who had worked the night shift, her eyes tired but alert, trying to remember everyone who had come through the emergency room during a particular window of time. There were so many people, she said. It was a busy night, or maybe it was slow. The nights all run together after a while. But I think I remember someone with a cut on their hand. Or was it their arm? They wrapped it themselves, I think. Or maybe we wrapped it. They didn't want to wait. Or they did wait, but then they left before being seen. Her voice trailed off, uncertain, and I could see her trying to pull something solid from the blur of countless nights, countless patients, countless moments that were routine to her but might have been pivotal to someone else's story. The interviews blur together now in my mind, becoming a single, continuous conversation that stretches back through the years. A voice tells me about a car. Was it blue or black? A voice describes a sound. Was it a shout or just the wind? A voice insists they saw someone. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they're misremembering. Maybe they've confused this night with another night, this face with another face. The words overlap and echo, questions asked and re-asked, answers given and revised, and through it all runs the same thread, the desperate human need to make sense of things, to create narrative out of chaos, to believe that if we could just remember correctly, if we could just find the right words, everything would finally become clear. But clarity, I've learned, is rare. More often, we have these soft, contradictory voices, whispering their uncertain testimonies into the patient, listening dark. In the archive room, the voices finally fade to something like silence, though not silence exactly. More like the memory of voices, the impression they leave behind, the way a room still feels occupied even after everyone has left. I sit very still, my hands resting on the closed case files, and I let the echoes wash over me one last time. I saw someone, they whisper. It was Tuesday or Thursday, early morning or late at night. I remember. I think I remember. The words have lost their urgency now, become soft and dreamlike, questions without the need for answers, stories without the need for endings. I think of all the times I've asked someone, "Are you certain?" and watched their certainty crumble under examination. Well, they'd say, "I thought I was certain, but now that you ask, maybe I'm not sure. Maybe it was different than I remember." Memory, I've learned, is not a recording. It's a reconstruction, built and rebuilt each time we access it, shaped by time and emotion and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we've witnessed. The more we remember something, the more we risk changing it, until sometimes we're left with a memory of a memory of a memory, generations removed from whatever truth once existed. But perhaps that's all right. Perhaps the truth isn't always the point. There's value, I think, in the act of bearing witness, even when the testimony is flawed. There's dignity in the effort to remember, to try to help, to sit across from a detective in a quiet room and offer up the contents of your memory, uncertain though they may be. Each person who spoke to me, who answered my questions or sat in silence, was trying in their own way to matter, to contribute, to be part of the story, even if they couldn't provide the ending I was looking for. I remember one final interview, conducted very late at night in a diner that never closed. The neon sign outside flickered rhythmically, casting shifting shadows across our booth. The person across from me, I can't quite remember now if it was a man or a woman, their face has faded in my memory, spoke in a voice that was already half asleep, words coming slow and soft. "I don't know if this helps," they said. "I don't know if it means anything, but I was there, at least I think I was there, and I saw, or felt, something that seemed important at the time, though I can't quite explain why." They stirred their coffee slowly, around and around, the spoon making a gentle sound against the ceramic. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I'm wasting your time, but I had to tell someone, I had to try. And I assured them, as I assured everyone, that nothing was a waste, that every detail mattered, that I was grateful for their time and their willingness to reach back into memory and offer what they found there, even if it was fragmented and uncertain. Because this is what the work is, really. Not the dramatic revelations or the sudden breakthroughs, but this slow accumulation of voices, this patient gathering of fragments, this willingness to sit in uncertainty and listen to what people need to say. The voices are almost gone now, faded to the softest whisper. I can barely make out the words anymore. Tuesday or Thursday. I saw. I thought I saw. I remember. I'm not sure I remember. They blend with the silence of the archive room, with the faint sound of my own breathing, with the subtle creaks and settles of an old building at rest, and I feel a deep sense of peace sitting here among these voices from the past, these testimonies that led nowhere and everywhere, these human attempts to make meaning in the face of mystery. They've told me what they can, They've given what they had to give. And now, like the evidence before them, like the cases themselves, they settle back into quiet, preserved, and honored, whispering their fragmentary truths into the gentle, accepting dark, where all voices eventually go, where all stories finally rest. And now, as the night deepens around us, as the hours fold into that profound stillness that exists only in the space between midnight and dawn, we return to the beginning. We return to the files themselves, to the cases that have become so familiar they feel like old companions, patient and quiet in their mystery. The detective sits once more before the same folders, the same photographs, the same documents that have been examined so many times. Their edges have grown soft with handling. There is comfort in this repetition, in returning to what is known, what has been studied and considered and contemplated through countless nights just like this one. The file from 1967 lies open again, the missing person case, the woman who walked away from her life on a Tuesday afternoon in autumn. We know her name now. We've said it before, whispered it into the quiet. Margaret. Margaret, who left her apartment with a suitcase, who was seen at the bus station, who purchased a ticket to somewhere the records no longer clearly show. The details are familiar, soft with repetition like a stone worn smooth by water, by time. The detective's fingers trace the same photographs, the same witness statements, reading them again not to discover something new, but to honor what is already known, to give these details their space in the night, their moment of recognition. Margaret wore a blue coat, the witnesses said, a blue coat and a hat with a small brim. She carried a brown suitcase, modest in size, and she looked, they said, she looked as though she knew exactly where she was going, even if no one else did, even if the records failed to preserve her destination. The bus station attendant remembered her because she was calm, he said, because she didn't seem hurried or frightened, just purposeful, just quiet. And then she stepped onto a bus, and the bus pulled away, and Margaret became a mystery, became a file, became a case that the detective now holds with gentle, familiar hands. There is something soothing in revisiting this story, in letting it unfold again in exactly the same way, with exactly the same details, like a lullaby that never changes, that comforts through its very consistency. The detective reads the description again: blue coat, brown suitcase, Tuesday afternoon, autumn. These words repeat, layer upon layer, each telling identical to the last. And in this repetition there is peace, there is acceptance of the unknown, there is rest. The detective turns to another file now, though the movement is slow, unhurried, as though time itself has softened, has lost its urgency in this deep hour of night. This case, from 1973, another familiar story, another set of details that have been examined and re-examined until they feel like memories from the detective's own life, from everyone's life, universal in their quiet mystery. A break-in at a jewelry store, but nothing taken. Nothing disturbed except for a single display case, its glass carefully removed, not shattered, but unscrewed, the pane lifted away with precision and care. The jeweler arrived that morning to find everything in place, every piece accounted for, except for the disturbed case, except for the tools left behind. A small screwdriver, a cloth, a piece of paper with numbers written on it, numbers that might have been a code or might have been random, might have meant everything or nothing at all. The detective recounts these details again, and they sound the same as they did hours ago, days ago, years ago, because they are the same, because some details never change, they only repeat, only echo through time like a gentle, persistent rhythm. The numbers on the paper, 4, 9, 2, 7, 3. We've seen them before, we've considered them before, 4, 9, 2, 7, 3. Perhaps a combination, perhaps a date, though which date, arranged in which order, remains unclear, remains soft with possibility. Perhaps a code, a message, something meaningful to someone, though that someone never returned, never came back to explain, never claimed the tools or retrieved the paper. The jewelry store case remains open, remains filed under unsolved, remains a mystery that asks nothing of us now except our gentle acknowledgement, our willingness to sit with it once more, to let its details wash over us like a familiar tide. The detective describes the store again, small, family-owned, on a corner lot with large windows, with displays of rings and watches and delicate chains that caught the light. The case that was opened contained necklaces, the jeweler said. Silver necklaces, simple designs, nothing extraordinarily valuable, nothing that would draw a thief's particular attention. Yet that case alone was chosen. That case alone was carefully, methodically opened, examined perhaps, considered, and then left undisturbed while the intruder disappeared back into the night, back into mystery, leaving only questions, only gentle, persistent questions that the detective now whispers again into the dark. Again, the detective returns to the file that began this long night's review. Or perhaps it was a different file. Perhaps they blend together now. Perhaps that blending is part of the piece, part of the way these stories settle into rest. A disappearance, yes, we remember. Someone who left and didn't return. Or was it an incident at a store, a disturbance that disturbed nothing? The details overlap now, softly, gently, like photographs laid one atop another, each image visible through the others, each story present and accounted for. The detective's voice is softer now, barely above a whisper, recounting the same elements we've heard before because there's comfort in hearing them again, because repetition is not tedious when delivered with care, with gentleness, with the slow rhythm of waves or breath or heartbeat. Margaret in her blue coat, the numbers on the paper, 49273, the bus that pulled away. The jewelry case with its careful removal. These details circle back, return, repeat with slight variations, or perhaps no variations at all, perhaps exactly the same each time, which is itself a comfort, a known quantity in the uncertain dark. The detective picks up a photograph, or perhaps picks up the same photograph again, or perhaps never put it down at all. The image shows a street corner, or was it a bus station, or a store window, or all of these at once, compressed into a single moment of captured time. The photograph is black and white, or perhaps sepia, or perhaps the color has simply faded into something between the two, something soft and amber and timeless. Faces look out from the image, strangers caught in a moment they didn't know would be preserved, would be examined, would be whispered about in the deep night decades later. Did one of them see something important? Did they hold a piece of the puzzle? We've asked before, we ask again. The questions are the same, always the same, soft and persistent, and never demanding answers, just existing, just being asked, just floating out into the quiet where all questions eventually go. The detective reads a witness statement again, the words familiar, expected, comforting in their consistency. I saw someone, the statement says. I saw someone, but I can't recall the details. It was so long ago. It was just a moment, just a glimpse. And this is enough, this acknowledgement of seeing without remembering, of presence without clarity. This is perfect for where we are now, in this hour, in this deep place of acceptance and rest. The case files remain open, spread across the desk in the archive room, or perhaps they've been closed and reopened, or perhaps they exist in some state between open and closed, between active and at rest, just as the cases themselves exist in a state between solved and unsolved, between forgotten and remembered. The detective's voice is almost inaudible now, a whisper within a whisper, recounting details that have become like a meditation, like a prayer, like words repeated so many times they transcend their literal meaning and become simply sound, simply rhythm, simply presence in the quiet night. Blue coat, brown suitcase, Tuesday, autumn, Margaret. 49273, jewelry store, corner lot, silver necklaces, glass carefully removed. Bus station, witness who can't remember, glimpse of someone, moment preserved in amber-toned time. These phrases repeat, cycle back, return like a gentle refrain, and with each repetition they grow softer, grow more dreamlike, grow more distant, and yet somehow more intimate, more present in their fading. The detective has examined these cases 1,000 times, the narration tells us. 1,000 times, or 10,000 times, or perhaps time has lost its meaning here. Perhaps we're beyond counting, beyond measuring, simply existing in the eternal present of the review, the consideration, the gentle acknowledgement of mystery. Each examination is identical to the last, and yet somehow different, somehow new. The way each wave that reaches the shore is both the same as all others and utterly unique, existing only in its moment before receding, before the next arrives, before the pattern continues in its endless, soothing rhythm. The photograph of Margaret, if that is her name, or perhaps the photograph is of the street or the store or something else entirely, something we've forgotten or never knew. The photograph lies in its folder, protected by tissue paper, yellowed with age, handled with care. The detective looks at it again, describing what they see. And what they see is what we've heard before. A figure in a coat, a moment captured, a life intersecting briefly with the lens before moving on, before becoming mystery, before joining the countless other mysteries that fill these files, these shelves, this quiet archive where nothing is ever truly lost because it is held here, preserved here, whispered about here in the deep watches of the night, when the world outside has fallen into its own dreams, its own peaceful forgetting. Once more, just once more, the detective returns to the details, but now the words come even slower, spaced further apart, as though spoken between long breaths, between heartbeats, between the spaces that exist in the deepest part of night. Margaret, the detective, whispers, or perhaps doesn't whisper at all, perhaps only thinks the name, and we hear it anyway because we've heard it so many times it echoes in memory, in the quiet spaces of our own minds. Margaret, who left on a Tuesday. Margaret in the blue coat. Margaret carrying the brown suitcase. Margaret stepping onto the bus. Margaret disappearing into the unknown, into the unsolved, into the peaceful mystery that no longer demands resolution, that asks only to be held, to be remembered, to be acknowledged in this gentle way, in this soft repetition that soothes rather than agitates, that comforts rather than disturbs. In the other case, the jewelry store, the numbers 4, 9, 2, 7, 3, the detective whispers these again, or perhaps we simply remember them. Perhaps they become part of us now, part of this night, part of this long, slow descent into rest. The glass carefully removed, the necklaces untouched, the tools left behind, the intruder who came and went like a ghost, like a whisper, like a mystery that was always meant to remain exactly as it is, perfect in its incompleteness, beautiful in its lack of resolution. The files will be reviewed again tomorrow night. The detective knows this, or perhaps they don't know it. Perhaps there is no tomorrow in this space, only this eternal now, this moment of review that extends infinitely backward and forward, that contains all the other reviews, all the other whispered recitations of the same beloved details. Blue coat, brown suitcase, 4, 9, 2, 7, 3. Tuesday afternoon, autumn, silver necklaces, corner lot, bus station, Margaret. These words are a lullaby now, a soft, continuous murmur, each detail floating into the next, boundaries dissolving, stories merging into one story, the story of mystery itself, the story of things that remain unknown and are loved anyway, are held anyway, are whispered about in the deep night anyway. The detective's voice fades now, fades until it's barely distinguishable from the silence around it, barely distinguishable from your own thoughts, your own breath, your own slow, gentle descent into the place where all stories eventually lead, where all mysteries finally rest, where the cases remain forever open and forever at peace, held in the soft dark, cradled in the whispered night, settling at last into the deepest, most complete and comforting stillness. And so the files begin their return, one by one, slowly, carefully, each folder closing with the softest whisper of paper against paper. That gentle sound echoing through the quiet archive room like a lullaby sung to the darkness itself. The detective's hands move with practiced tenderness, treating each case as something precious, something that deserves rest after all these years of waiting, all these decades of silence. The first file closes, the Peterson case, 1967, the woman who walked into the fog and never returned. And as the cover folds over those faded photographs, those yellowed witness statements, there's a sense of completion that isn't quite closure, but something softer, something more like acceptance. The file slides back onto its shelf, finding its place among the others, settling into the dust and the darkness where it belongs. And then the next one. The Hammond investigation, 1972. The letters that arrived with no return address. The voice on the phone that no one could identify. This case too finds its way home, back to the shelf, back to the quiet. The detective's movements are slow, almost ceremonial, each gesture deliberate and calm, as though performing a ritual that has been repeated countless times before, as though putting these mysteries to bed for the night, for the year, for however long they need to rest. Another file closes. The sound is barely audible now, just a whisper, just a breath. The Riverside Case, 1964, the child's bicycle found by the river, the search that went on for weeks and found nothing. And this story too returns to its place, sliding onto the shelf with the others, joining that collection of quiet mysteries, that library of unanswered questions. The detective pauses, fingers resting on the spine of the file for just a moment, as if saying goodbye, or perhaps good night, before moving on to the next. The archive room seems to breathe with these movements, the air shifting gently as each file finds its home, the shadows deepening and softening all at once. There's no urgency here, no rush, just this slow, careful process of returning each case to its rightful place in the darkness. The shelves accept them back without judgment, without disappointment, simply holding them in that peaceful suspension where unsolved cases live, where mysteries rest between the moments of investigation, waiting in the soft quiet for what? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps just this gentle holding, this patient silence. Another file closes and another, the names blur together now, becoming a soothing rhythm rather than distinct cases. Morrison, 1969. Caldwell, 1971. Each one a story, each one a life touched by mystery, and each one now returning to rest. The detective's voice grows quieter with each file returned, as though the act of putting these cases away is draining away the need for words, replacing language with simple presence, simple action. The hands move, the files close, the shelves receive, and the room grows stiller, more peaceful, settling into itself like a house settling at night. Those soft sounds of wood and paper, and time itself relaxing into rest. The shelves fill slowly, row by row, each file returning to its designated space, and there's something almost hypnotic about watching this process, about witnessing these stories being put away for the night. The detective moves along the shelves with quiet purpose, though the purpose itself seems to fade with each passing moment, becoming less about organization and more about ritual, about honoring these cases with careful attention even as they're returned to darkness. Another file slides into place. The metallic whisper of the shelf's edge, the soft thud as the folder comes to rest against its neighbors. These sounds create a rhythm, a pattern, repetitive and soothing like rain on a roof or waves on a distant shore. The Thornton Case, 1968, the man who disappeared from the train station back to the shelf. The Meadows Case, 1973, the photograph that showed up 40 years after the woman vanished. Back to the shelf. Each one settles into its place, and the detective's voice barely rises above a whisper now, simply naming them, acknowledging them, letting them know they're remembered even as they return to rest. The archive room accepts these cases back into its embrace, the darkness between the shelves deepening, becoming richer and more textured, as though the shadows themselves are made of all these unsolved stories. All these quiet mysteries woven together into something soft and encompassing. There's no sadness here, not anymore. Just this gentle acceptance, this peaceful recognition that some stories remain unfinished, some questions stay unanswered. And that's all right, that's okay, that's simply how some things are. The detective's breathing is slow and even, matching the pace of the work. And perhaps if you listen carefully, you can hear how that breath synchronizes with your own. How the rhythm of files returning to shelves matches the rhythm of your own settling, your own letting go. Another file, and another, the names becoming a soft litany, a murmured prayer to the mysteries themselves. Watson, 1966. Reynolds, 1970. Each name spoken with respect, with tenderness, and then released, let go, allowed to rest. The stack of open files on the desk grows smaller, and the shelves grow fuller. This exchange happening so slowly, so gradually, that it feels almost dreamlike, almost as though it's not really happening at all, but rather something you're remembering or imagining or dreaming. The detective's movements become slower still, each gesture elongated, stretching out in time, as though moving through water, through thick, soft air, through the very substance of sleep itself. A file closes, the sound like a whisper, like a sigh, and slides onto the shelf, finding its place among the others, nestling into that collection of mysteries, becoming part of the pattern, part of the whole. And the detective pauses, just stands there for a moment, looking at the shelves, at all these cases now returned to their places, and there's something peaceful in that gaze, something accepting and calm. These stories will wait here, patient and quiet, for as long as they need to wait. For years, for decades, for forever, held safe in this archive room, protected by the darkness and the silence, by the dust and the distance of time. The detective's hand reaches for another file, the last few now, the final cases that need returning, and the movements are so slow, so gentle that they barely disturb the air, barely create any sound at all. Now the desk is almost empty, just a few files remaining, the last stories waiting to be returned to their rest, and the detective handles these final cases with even greater care, as though they're the most fragile, the most precious. Or perhaps it's simply that the slowness has accumulated, has built up over time until every movement takes twice as long as the one before, until every gesture is performed in that dreamy space between waking and sleep. The Bennett case. 1965, the locked room, the missing key, the mystery that seemed impossible from the very start. The file closes with barely a sound, just the whisper of paper settling against paper, and then it's lifted, carried across the room with such deliberate slowness that you can almost see each moment as separate from the next, each inch of movement its own small eternity. The file reaches the shelf, slides into its space, and comes to rest, complete, returned. The detective's voice is so quiet now that it's almost not a voice at all, just a breath shaped into words, just air moving with barely enough intention to create meaning. The next file, the last one, or is it? Perhaps there's one more after this. It's hard to tell, hard to focus, the details blurring together in the softest possible way, like watercolors running together, like memories fading into dreams. The Carson case, 1974. Or was it 73? The year doesn't matter anymore. The dates have dissolved into the general sense of pastness, of long ago, of stories told so many times that their edges have worn smooth. This case, whatever its details, whatever its mystery, now closes. The sound like sleep itself, like the moment of drifting off, that soft surrender to darkness and rest. And it too finds its way back to the shelf, guided by hands that know the way without thinking, that have done this countless times before, and will do it countless times again. The archive room is almost complete now, almost whole, the files returned to their places, the cases settling back into their long, quiet waiting. The detective stands in the center of the room, surrounded by these shelves, surrounded by these stories, and the feeling is not of being trapped or overwhelmed, but rather of being held, embraced, wrapped in the gentle presence of all these mysteries, all these unsolved questions that have learned patience, that have learned how to rest. The last file, truly the last one now, rests in the detective's hands, and there's a moment of hesitation, not reluctance, but simply a pause, a breath, an acknowledgement that this is an ending, or at least the completion of a cycle. The file is thin, worn at the edges, the paper inside yellowed and fragile. The details don't matter, the name doesn't matter. What matters is this gentle closing, this careful return, this final act of putting the case to rest. The folder closes, so slowly, like eyelids growing heavy, like consciousness fading, and then the movement toward the shelf, each second stretching out longer than the one before, time itself becoming liquid, becoming soft, becoming something that flows rather than ticks. The file slides into its place, the last space on the shelf, filling it completely, making the collection whole, and as it settles, as it comes to rest against its neighbors, there's an almost audible sigh from the room itself, a releasing of held breath, a relaxing into completeness. All the files are home now, all the cases returned, the shelves full and complete and resting in their orderly rows, each folder in its place, each mystery held safe in the darkness of the archive. The detective steps back, looking at the shelves with eyes that are growing heavy, with a gaze that softens and blurs at the edges, taking in not the individual cases anymore, but the whole, the collection, the library of whispered stories that fills this quiet room. There's nothing more to be done, no more files to close, no more shelves to fill. Just this standing, this looking, this peaceful presence in the stillness. The detective's breathing is so slow now, so deep and even, and perhaps your own breath has matched that rhythm without you noticing, has fallen into that same gentle pattern of in and out, rise and fall, the slow tide of sleep beginning to pull you deeper, deeper, into the soft darkness where all these stories rest. The room is still, so still, the air barely moving, the dust settled, the shadows no longer shifting but held in perfect peaceful suspension. Everything is as it should be. Everything is in its place. The case is closed, the files returned, the mysteries tucked safely away in their appointed spaces, waiting there in the quiet for nothing really, for no one, just waiting, just resting, just being held in the patient darkness. The detective's voice is barely audible now, more thought than sound, more feeling than word, murmuring something about closure that isn't closure, about endings that aren't endings, about how some stories are meant to remain unfinished, how some mysteries are more about the asking than the answering, more about the holding than the solving. And there's comfort in this, deep comfort, the recognition that not everything needs to be tied up neatly, that loose ends can simply dangle there in the darkness, softly, without tension, without worry. The archive room holds all of this, all the questions, all the unresolved details, all the leads that went nowhere, all the evidence that proved nothing, holds them without judgment, without frustration, simply accepting them as they are, incomplete and yet somehow whole in their incompleteness. The detective moves toward the door now, so slowly, each step deliberate and soft, careful not to disturb the stillness that has settled over everything like a blanket, like snow, like the gentle weight of sleep itself. The hand reaches for the light switch, hesitates there for a moment, and in that pause you can almost feel the room taking one last deep breath, settling even deeper into its rest. And then the lights begin to dim. Not all at once, but gradually, slowly, the golden amber glow fading by degrees into a deeper darkness, a richer quiet. And as the light fades, the detective's voice fades with it, the words growing softer and softer, more and more indistinct, blending into the darkness, becoming part of the shadows, until there's almost nothing left but breath, but presence, but the sense of someone standing in a doorway looking back at a room full of sleeping mysteries, of dreaming cases, of stories that have finally been allowed to rest. The darkness deepens and deepens. And the voice whispers something about how all these cases will be here tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, waiting patiently, resting peacefully, held safe in this archive room where time moves slowly when it moves at all, where mysteries can sleep undisturbed for years, for decades, for as long as they need to sleep. And now the light is almost gone, just the faintest glow remaining, just enough to see the outlines of the shelves, the shapes of the files, the soft contours of the archive room settling into complete and total rest. The detective's hand finally finds the switch, or perhaps doesn't, perhaps just lets it be, letting the last bit of light fade naturally, gradually, dissolving into the darkness like everything else, like the cases themselves, like the details and the names and the years and the questions, all of it dissolving, all of it fading, all of it settling into the deep quiet peace of unsolved mysteries at rest. The voice is barely there now, just the ghost of a voice, just the memory of words, murmuring something about Peterson, or was it Hammond, or perhaps Thornton. The names blending together, repeating softly, circling back on themselves in a gentle, endless loop. 1967 or 68 or 72. The years no longer distinct, no longer separate, just pastness, just long ago, just the soft blur of time passing in the darkness. The woman who walked into the fog, the letters with no return address, the bicycle by the river, the locked room, the photograph, the train station. All these images floating together now, overlapping, repeating, each one fading into the next, creating a continuous soft murmur of mystery. A lullaby of unsolved cases, a whispered song of questions that need no answers because the asking itself is enough, the holding itself is enough, the resting itself is complete. The detective is leaving now, or has already left, or perhaps never leaves but simply becomes part of the archive, part of the shadows, part of the stillness that holds all these stories in its patient embrace. The door closes, so softly, so slowly, barely a sound, just the quietest click, just the gentlest seal, and the archive room is alone now, alone with its cases, alone with its mysteries, alone in the most peaceful way, the way a bedroom is alone when someone has just fallen asleep, the way night is alone when everyone is dreaming, and the cases rest, the files rest, the shelves rest, the room rests, everything settling deeper, deeper, into that place where all stories eventually go, where all mysteries finally find their home, where nothing needs to be solved or understood or explained, where everything simply is, simply rests, simply waits in the soft, patient darkness. The voice is gone now, or almost gone. Just the faintest whisper remaining, barely audible, barely there, murmuring something about sleep, about rest, about how these cases will wait here forever if they need to, how they're safe, how they're held, how they're at peace in the archive, and how you too are safe, held, at peace, settling into your own archive of dreams, your own collection of mysteries, your own quiet shelves where thoughts and worries and questions can be filed away, closed gently, returned to their places, allowed to rest. The darkness is complete now, soft and rich and encompassing. And in that darkness, the cases sleep, the files sleep, the archive sleeps, and you sleep too, held in the same gentle stillness, wrapped in the same patient quiet, drifting in the same peaceful darkness where all mysteries rest, where all stories wait, where everything finally settles into the deepest, softest, most complete and comforting stillness. Stillness, stillness, rest. Thank you for listening tonight. If this story helped you drift off, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more calming stories. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.